Well, it's very, very significant. Again, it's the worst day we've had in the Middle East in a very, very long time. It was carried out by an Iranian-supported Shia militia that is based in Iraq, and we clearly have to retaliate. And it should not be a one-off. I think that this will be a campaign that has multiple strikes over multiple days, despite what Iran and its militias are now saying that they're going to take a knee, they're not going to do anything else, and so forth. They cannot get away with this. We have to degrade their capabilities very, very substantially. There has to be a very clear message sent that this is not going to be allowed to happen without a substantial response. And ideally, this would restore deterrence, although I want to be careful about that because there are individual militias. They don't always take central direction from Iran, and they have their own agenda, which is to try to push the Iraqi government to push the Americans out of Iraq, something the government doesn't want to do because we help them defeat the Islamic State. So again, we have to try to restore deterrence, noting that that's very difficult given the number of individual actors and leaders here and who don't always take direction from Iran.
The administration has been retaliating against several attacks against U.S. positions throughout the fall by Iranian proxies. Is this an indication that so far the retaliatory efforts by the administration have not been effective?
Well, they have not deterred further attacks.
Right.
And so clearly
this needs to be
a much more robust series of strikes has to be carried out. And again, this won't be a single day's worth of strikes. I think this will be quite a campaign of strikes against those Iranian-supported Shia militias that operate in Iraq and also in Syria.
Do you think Iran knew about this attack?
I don't know, actually. Again, these elements have a degree of independence of action. There's no question that Iran funds, trains, equips, and often does direct them and gives overall guidance, but I don't have any idea whether or not they knew that this attack was taking place or certainly directed it.
You write in your book, Conflict, that Iran has historically tried to, quote, straddle a delicate line, seeking to attack the United States in ways that would wound us, but not severely enough as to trigger a direct retaliation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What they are happy to do is fight to the last Houthi or the last Iraqi militia member or the last Hezbollah fighter or the last Hamas terrorist, but not directly confront the United States, because if they did, we would respond very forcefully and they undoubtedly would be on the losing end of that. The problem is we don't want to see that either because we have lots of vulnerabilities in the region and even around the world. And this is a case where we'd experience problems and challenges just as they would.
The attack itself hit near the base's living quarters. Do you believe it was the intent of the attack to kill U.S. service members? Oh,
sure, I do. Yeah. I'm sure that was the case. Again, this is a first-person view attack drone, suicide drone, so it went where it was directed by its operator. And the tragedy in this case is that our normally quite good and effective counter-drone systems didn't engage this particular drone, apparently because it was thought to be a U.S. drone that was also in the area at the same time.
Republicans in the United States Senate have been calling for President Biden to immediately strike Iran directly. Senator Lindsey Graham says, hit Iran now. Senator John Cornyn says, target Tehran. Senator Tom Cotton says anything less than devastating military retaliation will confirm that Joe Biden is a coward and unworthy of being commander-in-chief. Now, is it helpful in any way for the Iranians to hear this rhetoric?
Well, look, it's an election year. It's much easier to offer thoughts on these actions when you're not in the actual situation room. Politics are obviously at play here. By the way, I talked to all three of those individuals and have for decades.
But is it helpful that they say it? Is it literally just politics, or is there some geopolitical impact for Iran and Tehran to hear really aggressive rhetoric, at least from some quarters of the United States?
It's not unhelpful, actually, in the sense that they should be on notice. By the way, I would, if I were advising, on the target option list would be targets in Iran, without question. It's just, I'm not certain that this is when you want to begin the targets.
How imminent do you think a retaliatory strike or series of strikes should be?
Again, I think we should do it as has been stated, at the time and place of our choosing. You want to keep them on edge for a period of time as well. You want them to have sleepless nights. You want to degrade their readiness because of their concerns. Their leaders have had to flee. When the moment comes when we assess that it would most effectively achieve the objectives, that's when you pull the trigger, or begin to pull the trigger, because this won't be a single pull of the trigger. This will be multiple actions and multiple strikes over multiple days.
I'd like to turn to the Israel-Hamas war.
Sure.
General, you have said that you cannot think of any situation that has been as, quote, fiendishly difficult as what Israel is facing right now in its fight against Hamas. They're fighting plainclothes enemy in hundreds of miles of underground tunnels, and civilians are being used as shields, and the lives of hostages are held in the balance. Recently, I've heard you say that it's possible for Israel to still accomplish its goal of destroying Hamas.
It is, I think. Again, keep in mind, they've laid out 3 objectives. 2 of these are in tension with one another, but the first is, of course, to destroy Hamas. I believe they should seek to destroy Hamas. I see Hamas as equivalent of the Islamic State. Yes, there's a Palestinian nationalism element there that makes that analogy imperfect, but I think without question that this is an enemy, this is a terrorist group with which you cannot reconcile. You can't negotiate. They have to be destroyed. Second objective is to dismantle the political wing of Hamas. Clearly, they can never be allowed again to govern Gaza, because they would bring back the same kind of conditions and threats for Israel. And then, of course, to recover the hostages. Recognizing that, again, objectives 1 and 3 are in tension, and if it requires a month or 2-month ceasefire to get back more, if not all, of the hostages, then I agree with that. But this campaign is going to continue, I think, for many, many months. We're 3.5 months into this. The Israelis have largely cleared the northern part of Gaza, but that means that you have to clear and then hold areas and then rebuild them, and ideally get the people back into them, keep the hospitals going, get humanitarian assistance, restore basic services. There should be a vision for the Palestinians, I think, as well. That should be laid out, and that is that we will make life better for you once we get Hamas out of your lives. It'll be a tough sell, there's no question, but hearts and minds matter in this kind of endeavor. But keep in mind, that's just northern Gaza. There's operations ongoing in central Gaza, but a lot more tough fighting to do there. And then southern Gaza, which is where the leader of the military wing of Hamas and the leader within Gaza is suspected of being located, undoubtedly deep underground, surrounded by civilians and hostages. But this is the most fiendishly difficult. This is far more challenging than were Ramadi, Fallujah, Baquba. It's a bigger area, much larger population, higher buildings, and this 350 miles worth of subterranean tunnels and infrastructure and everything else